He appeared like a shadow in the corner of my world, quiet, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. They enter quietly, like a breath you didn't realize you were holding. And by the time you notice them, your life is already different. Welcome to Lovelock Tales. Before we continue, if you like timeless romance, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Now, let's jump right back into the story. Iris Moore did not come back to this city looking for something new. She came looking for less noise, less urgency, less of the feeling that her life was always on the verge of demanding something she no longer had the strength to give. The coastal town had not changed much since she left it years ago, or perhaps it had changed in quieter ways, the kind that only revealed themselves when you walk its streets slowly enough. The sea still arrived each morning like a promise it had never broken. The air still carried salt and old stories. The buildings leaned into one another as if sharing secrets. Iris chose a small apartment near the edge of town. Nothing impressive, nothing symbolic. Just enough space for herself, her thoughts, and the careful routines she had rebuilt piece by piece. Her days were orderly. She woke early, drank her coffee by the window, walked the same path along the shore every evening. She did not rush. She did not linger. It was a life designed to be survivable. There was loneliness in it, but not the kind that begs to be filled. This was a loneliness that had learned how to sit quietly, that understood restraint, that did not ask for rescue. Iris had loved deeply once, or perhaps she had simply loved intensely. Either way, she had learned the cost of letting something consume too much of her center. So she told herself she was done with intensity, done with the sharpness of wanting, done. The house across from hers had been empty for years. Everyone knew that. So when lights appeared one evening, dim, uneven, behind curtains that never fully opened, Iris noticed. The man moved in silently. No moving truck, no visitors, no music, just a presence. He left early, returned late, and never once stood outside long enough to be seen clearly. Iris told herself she wasn't curious. Curiosity required intention. This felt accidental. But some nights, when she turned off her lamp, she felt it. The sensation of being observed, not threatening, just aware. And then, as if the universe had grown tired of subtlety, Iris did not expect to meet anyone that day. The weather had shifted suddenly. One of those coastal turns where clouds gather without warning, and the sky decides something different than it promised an hour before. She ducked into the small bookstore near the pier, more out of habit than intention. It smelled like paper and dust and something faintly sweet. Time, perhaps? She wandered the aisles without urgency, letting her fingers trail along spines she did not intend to read. And then, quietly, he was there. Not abrupt, not startling, just present. Caleb Rowan stood a few feet away, scanning a shelf as though he'd been there all along. Mid-30s, maybe? Dressed plainly. Nothing about him demanded attention. And yet, something in the way he stood felt deliberate, as though stillness were a skill he'd learned, not a default. Their first words were unremarkable. A comment about the weather, a shared smile over the unreliability of coastal forecasts. But the conversation didn't spark. It settled. Caleb listened the way people rarely do, without preparing his response while she spoke, without interrupting, without performing interest. When he asked questions, they were gentle but precise. How long have you been back? What made you choose this place again? Not invasive, just accurate. Iris noticed how carefully he phrased things, how he avoided talking about himself unless directly asked, and even then kept his answers factual, contained. He never lied. But he edited. They walked together when the rain softened, down toward the pier where the woods still glistened. Caleb seemed to know the town intimately. Shortcuts, quiet corners, places Alara herself had forgotten. "You haven't been here long," she said casually. He smiled, not defensive, not surprised. "Long enough," he replied. And somehow, that answer felt complete. They parted without promises, without exchanged expectations. Just a shared pause at the end, the kind that suggests continuation without demanding it. That night, Iris realized something unsettled her. Not his mystery, but the way he already felt. Familiar. Their connection grew the way quiet things do. Without ceremony, without declaration, coffee became routine. Walks along the shore stretched longer. Silences grew comfortable. Caleb fit into Iris's carefully rebuilt life without disturbing its shape. He didn't overwhelm her, didn't demand access. He noticed things, the way she drank her tea only after it cooled slightly, the way she avoided certain streets without explanation, the way she grew quieter when conversations drifted toward the future. And when he noticed, he didn't press. Trust for Iris arrived disguised as peace. Yet, there were moments. Calls Caleb would step away to take, calls he wouldn't answer at all if she was nearby. Days when he vanished completely, no texts, no explanations, then returned calm, present, unchanged. Once she noticed a scar when his sleeve rode up briefly. She didn't ask. He didn't offer. But later, someone at the cafe asked her casually, "The man you're seeing, Caleb, how do you know him?" The question lingered longer than it should have. That night, Iris wondered, does love require knowing everything, or just knowing enough? Pressure rarely announces itself. It does not arrive with shouting or sirens. It arrives as a change in air. Iris felt it first as unease, a quiet tightening beneath the surface of her days. The town had not grown louder. If anything, it had become more careful. She noticed unfamiliar cars parked too long on familiar streets, strangers whose eyes lingered a fraction longer than courtesy allowed, questions asked casually but not accidentally. At first she told herself she was imagining it, that returning to this place had made her too aware of patterns, too sensitive to disruption. But Caleb noticed. He always noticed. He began to adjust without explanation. Walks were rerouted. Meetings happened indoors more often. Windows were checked before being opened. None of it was frantic. All of it was deliberate. Caleb did not become distant. He still showed up, still listened, still held her hand with the same steadiness. But something behind his eyes had shifted. As though part of him had stepped back, not from her, but from hope. One evening, as they sat in silence, broken only by the hum of the radiator, Iris felt the weight of unsaid things settle heavily between them. "You're pulling away," she said quietly. Caleb looked at her then, fully, no evasion, no deflection. "I'm trying not to," he replied. That answer frightened her more than denial would have, because it acknowledged effort, and effort suggested stakes. The past has a way of resurfacing without permission. A man approached Iris outside the cafe one afternoon, someone who used Caleb's full name without introduction. His tone was neutral. His interest was not. Later that night, Caleb did not ask what was said. He already knew. Iris saw in the way his shoulders tightened when she mentioned the encounter, in the way his jaws set, not in anger, but calculation. Whatever he had left behind had found him again. "Talk to me," she said later, not pleading, not demanding, inviting. Caleb sat for a long moment before answering. "I'm not in danger because of who I am," he said finally. The words were measured, carefully chosen. "I'm in danger because of what I know." The silence that followed was thick. Iris felt the urge to ask more, to push, to insist, to claim the truth as something love was owed. But she waited. And Caleb did not continue. Fear entered their relationship quietly, not as panic, but as awareness. The awareness that love was no longer only between them, that something else had stepped into the space. Unseen, unnamed, but powerful. Iris understood then that love could survive many things. Distance, silence, even mystery. But danger changed the equation. It turned unanswered questions into liabilities, and trust into something that required negotiation. That night, lying awake beside him, Iris wondered, how much truth could love carry before it broke beneath the weight of not knowing? Caleb stared at the ceiling, eyes open, breath steady. He had already answered that question for himself, and he was afraid of what the answer would cost them both. The night it happened, nothing felt unusual at first. The sky was calm. The streets were familiar. The world on the surface had not shifted at all. Iris left the cafe just after dusk, pulling her coat tighter as the temperature dipped. The lights along the street flickered on one by one, casting long shadows that stretched and blended into each other. She walked the route she always did, steady, unhurried. It wasn't until she crossed the third intersection that she felt it, that subtle, prickling awareness at the back of her neck. Footsteps. Not loud, not rushed, but consistent. She slowed. So did the sound. She stopped briefly to check her phone. The footsteps stopped too. Her pulse sharpened, not into panic, but into clarity. This was not coincidence. She resumed walking, heart now moving faster than her feet. Every instinct urged her not to turn around. She understood, suddenly, why prey animals freeze, not because they are weak, but because awareness is sometimes safer than reaction. When she reached her building, her hands shook only once as she unlocked the door. Inside, the quiet felt too loud. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. He answered immediately. "Are you alone?" he asked before she could speak. "Yes." A breath released on the other end, controlled but heavy. "Did anyone follow you?" She hesitated, then told the truth. "Yes." There was a pause. Not long, but full. "This is why," Caleb said quietly. "I shouldn't have stayed." Not regret. Responsibility. When he arrived, he didn't touch her right away. He scanned the room, the windows, the hallway outside, his movements precise, practiced. Iris watched him then with new eyes. Not the man she loved, but the man he had been trying not to show her. "You're not angry," she said. "No," he replied. "I'm afraid." That word landed differently than any declaration of love ever could. Caleb paced the small living room, hands clasped behind his back, jaw tight. "I knew this would happen," he said finally. "I just hoped it wouldn't reach you." "You don't get to decide that alone," Iris replied. He turned to her then, eyes dark with conflict. "I do if it keeps you safe." There it was. The fracture sent. Caleb believed protection meant absence. Iris believed love meant truth. "This ends now," he said. "I leave. Tonight if I have to." "No," she said softly but firmly. "You don't get to disappear and call it love." Silence stretched between them, taut as wire. Caleb's voice dropped. "You don't understand what they can do." "Then tell me," she said, "because being left in the dark is its own kind of danger. Fear does strange things to love. It sharpens it, clarifies it, strips away illusion." In that moment, Iris understood something devastating. Loving her had made Caleb vulnerable, and loving him had made her visible. They were no longer just two people choosing each other. They were points of leverage in a story that did not belong to them alone. Caleb looked at her, as if memorizing her face, every line, every shadow. "I never meant to pull you into this," he said. "I chose you," Iris replied. That was never the mistake. The decision pressed in on them heavy, unavoidable. To love now meant risk. To leave meant loss. And neither option was clean. Outside, somewhere in the dark, someone else was paying attention. And for the first time, love was no longer just something that happened between two people. It was something that could be used against them. That night, neither of them slept. Because once love becomes leverage, there is no returning to innocence. Some truths don't destroy love. They force it to choose a shape. Caleb did not tell the truth all at once. He began the way people do when the truth has lived too long inside them, carefully, as if touching something sharp in the dark. They sat across from each other in Iris's living room, no lights on, only the dim spill from the street outside, flickering as cars passed. This was not a confession born of panic. It was a surrender. "I didn't come here to disappear," Caleb said quietly. "I came here to stop something." Iris did not interrupt. She had learned by now that when Caleb spoke like this, every word had been weighed. "There was an investigation," he continued. "Not official. Not clean. Years ago, before the town, before her Caleb had worked close enough to power to see how easily it bent. Records altered. Names erased. People ruined quietly without spectacle. He had been tasked with watching patterns, irregularities that didn't want attention. And then he saw it. Not a single crime, but a system that fed on silence. "I documented it," he said. "Not to expose it immediately. That would have gotten people killed, including me. So he did what cautious people do when they learn something dangerous. He waited, he gathered, he hid what he knew across places no single search could erase. And when someone realized what he had found, he ran. Not because he was guilty, but because knowing too much made him inconvenient. That's why I move," Caleb said. "That's why I don't stay long anywhere. And that's why I don't let people get close." Iris felt the weight of his words settle slowly. "Then why stay this time?" she asked. Caleb exhaled. "Because I thought I was done being hunted." He had chosen the town because it was quiet. Because it didn't look like a place where unfinished business would come looking. And then he met her. "I didn't plan to fall in love with you," he said. "I planned to disappear." His voice did not break, but something in his posture did. "When they couldn't reach me," he continued, "they looked for proximity." Iris understood before he finished. "They followed me," she said. "Yes. Not to hurt her. Not yet. To measure her." "Love in you made me visible again," Caleb said. That visibility put you in danger." Silence pressed in hard now. Iris felt anger rise, but it was tangled with something else. Understanding. "You should have told me," she said. "I know." Not defensive, not excusing, just acknowledgement. "I was afraid," he admitted. "Not of losing you. Of making you choose something you never consented to." The choice lay bare now, stripped of romance. If Caleb stayed, Iris would remain a point of pressure, a way to force his hand, a vulnerability he could not outmaneuver. If he left, she would be safe and alone. "This is where I walk away," Caleb said quietly. "Before they decide you matter enough to threaten." "No," Iris replied. "Not loudly, but completely. You don't get to decide my risk for me." He looked at her then, truly shaken. "This isn't a story," he said. "There's no guarantee." "I know," she said, "but love doesn't mean being protected from truth. It means standing in it, not divided by distance, by consequence." Caleb's life had been shaped by retreat, by containment, by survival. Iris's had been shaped by recovery, by choosing to stay present even when it hurt. Staying together would mean shared danger, Separating would mean survival without each other. Neither path spared them. "I love you," Caleb said. Not as a plea, as a fact. "And that's why I can't stay." Iris closed her eyes. She did not argue. She understood, finally, the shape of the truth. Some love stories end not because love fails, but because love refuses to sacrifice the other to itself. When she opened her eyes, the decision had been made. Not together, but with respect, and that, somehow, made it worse. Some endings do not close. They stay open and change the air around them. Caleb did not leave in the middle of the night. There was no rush, no dramatic final glance. He left the way he had lived, quietly, carefully, as though minimizing sound could minimize damage. By morning, his things were gone. Not erased, just absent. The cup he always used no longer sat by the sink. The book he had never finished was missing from the table. The space where his shoes had rested by the door looked oddly deliberate, as though it had been prepared in advance. Iris stood in the doorway for a long time, waiting for something. She wasn't sure what. The town returned to its rhythm with unsettling ease. Cars passed, cafes opened, the sea arrived and retreated on schedule. Whatever danger had been circling her loosened its grip, or simply stepped back into the shadows. No one followed her anymore, and somehow that absence felt louder than the fear ever had. Days passed, then weeks. Iris learned the geography of grief that does not announce itself. She did not cry constantly. She did not collapse. Instead, she found herself listening more closely. To footsteps behind her, to pauses in conversations, to the spaces where something should have been said but wasn't. She wondered if Caleb was still moving, if he slept lightly, if he ever stopped scanning rooms before entering them. She wondered if he missed her the way she missed him, not as pain, but as awareness. One evening she found herself standing at the pier again, the same place where they had once talked about nothing important. The water moved darkly beneath the boards, reflecting broken light. She realized then that she had not lost him the way people usually lose each other. There had been no betrayal, no failure of love, only a choice made in full clarity. And somehow that made it harder to let go. Occasionally, she noticed small things. A car parked briefly across the street, then gone. A message draft unsent. A number she did not recognize calling once, never again. She did not know if these were signs or ghosts her mind had learned to create, and she no longer trusted herself to tell the difference. Iris did not regret loving him. That surprised her. The love had not ruined her. It had sharpened her. She moved through the world now with her eyes open, aware that safety was fragile. That truth was costly, and that love was not always a place you could stay. Sometimes it was simply a moment that taught you how deeply you could be reached. On nights when sleep refused her, she imagined Caleb somewhere else, another town, another borrowed life, still watching, still careful, still carrying her with him in the quiet way people do when love is no longer allowed to be visible. She did not know if he was safe. She did not know if she would ever see him again. But she knew this. What they shared had been real, and real things do not disappear. They settle. They wait. They change the shape of who you become. Some love stories end. Others simply go underground. And you live the rest of your life listening, not for their return, but for the way they taught you to hear the world differently. If you enjoyed this story, there's more where this came from. Hit the subscribe button and stay tuned.